The surf coast often delivers, and today is absolutely no exception. What a beautiful sunrise. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning, about to head out and meet Brandon from Simpatico Bikes. So I've been cruising around on one of Simpatico's N1 gravel bikes for the last few months. They helped me out in a bit of a bind that I had after I crashed my Canyon Grail into the carport. So yeah, Brandon's been lovely, and keen to head out and go for a ride with him around the stunning Anglesea Heath area. And yeah, have a chat to him a bit more later today about Simpatico, what sort of their plans are, what it's like to start a brand new bike brand, and yeah, to bring you a bit of the Simpatico story. So yeah, I think we've got a really exciting day in store, and yeah, if the weather stays like this, it's going to be an absolutely beautiful ride. So yeah, keen to bring it to you now. What a stunning morning it is. Love getting out here, just out the back of Aries Inlet now. Just cruising over to meet up with Brandon. And yeah, then we're going to tackle about a 40k loop on the Anglesea Heath. Oh, corrugations. 40k loop on the Anglesea Heath. Head over to the back of Anglesea, and then head up the hill, up to the car race testing track at the back of Anglesea there. Loop back around and come down Bamborough Road, which yeah, really shook me up the other morning. I met up with Brandon, gone up ahead. Just come across to the back of Anglesea, and yeah, we have to head up the big hill. So last time I came up here, I had to get off and walk. So hopefully there's a bit more juice in the legs this morning. And yeah, I think we'll get some pretty specky views from up on top. So yeah, looking forward to it. Halfway up the climb. Let's forget how hard this is. It's a real steep climb, like goes up real steep, levels off. Getting about halfway up, Brandon's just killing me. It's like another pincher up ahead. Alright, made it to the top. Good climb, no walking this time. And it's yeah, beautiful up here on the top of the hill. Oh, a bit bumpy.
Hi, welcome back to the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast. Happy to have Brandon from Simpatico Bikes joining us. Brandon, welcome to the podcast and welcome to beautiful Moggs Creek.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's the first time I've been to Moggs. I'm looking out there on the big blue ocean, so you guys can't see that, but if I get distracted, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, we've got a pretty special view here. It's a bit of a spiritual home for me. I've been coming down here for my whole life, and yeah, glad to share it with other people, and the gravel riding around here is absolutely phenomenal. So if you get a chance, just down here on the surf coast, come down, check it out. And yeah, we've gone for a great ride this morning over to the Anglesea Heath area, up the hill.
Plenty up the hill.
Yeah, plenty of hills around here, so make sure your gearing's sorted. But yeah, we've had a great ride this morning, and as you might know, I've been riding the Simpatico N1 for the last month or so. Initially around Melbourne, I've ridden it in the Otway foothills over the back here, and now around the surf coast area, and yeah, keen to bring you the story of Simpatico Bikes. It's a good one and a local story about a new bike brand, and yeah, I think they've got a lot to offer the scene. So Brandon, can you start by telling us a little bit about your background in cycling and yeah, how you came to be involved with Simpatico?
Yeah, so I've always ridden bikes. Used to riding on 10-speed to school back in the day, and then sort of left it with a bit when I had young family and have come back to it again later in life. So yeah, been back in the industry for probably about 8 years now, and back on bikes. So
excellent. And so how did Simpatico start? Like, where's it come from?
So it started, Jeff and I have known each other for about 10 years, and then about 3 or 4 years ago, our friendship intersected again, and we came to started chatting again, and found out he was back riding bikes, and he hadn't ridden a lot before that, and so we just started talking about different ideas, different trends. He was talking about getting frames made because he couldn't find what he's looking for, and so we're talking about geometry and gearing and group sets and just a whole bunch of stuff, and then about probably the end of 22, maybe a little bit before that, we thought, why don't we just give it a go? What do we got to lose? You know, we've already been testing a frame for a year. We've got a pretty good handle on the geometry. We've got some connections with some suppliers. Let's have a go. So we made the commitment and launched at the Handmade Bike Show this year, and yeah, still learning as we go, and still developing future models as well. So yeah, that's the short story. I'm sure Jeff would tell a bit more of a story as well, but that's how it really came about.
Yeah, excellent. I ran into Jeff at the Handmade Bike Show earlier this year. I think we had him on the podcast, a short snippet. So yeah, I saw your bikes there for the first time, and yeah, straight away, yeah, they're beautiful machines. So you're building primarily out of titanium?
Yeah, at the moment, that's, yeah, we've already delved in different ideas of different things, but we find titanium a pretty good medium for gravel. It's durable, it's reasonably light, it's got some compliance in it, and it performs well. So yeah. Yeah,
excellent. I think yeah, there's a few brands doing titanium gravel bikes, and they're really popular. So yeah. Before we sort of dive a bit deeper into Simpatico, I saw you rode the Dirty Warnie recently on a Simpatico. How'd you go? How was your day out?
Well, I only took the call about probably a week out, because the other guy we had lined up to ride pulled out. I thought, well, we should get another bike out there. So hadn't done a lot of training, hadn't really amped up my Ks or done much training, but I had to go. Went out a bit hard, but I think you get caught up in the sort of the emotion with some of those events, but yeah, had a blast. Got through, not a super quick time, but just under 11 hours. So got through to the end and survived. So
I think anyone who can survive the Dirty Warnie on practically no training has done well. So yeah, good on you.
Yeah, I've done plenty of long days in the past and plenty of multi days of long riding. So you know, mentally I was prepared for it and knew what I was up for. So.
Yeah, well, I should have mentioned at the start, you just rode over here to Moggs Creek from Phillip Island just yesterday, 150 Ks on the bikepacking rig. So yeah, you've obviously got it in the legs.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a good unwind. I find the long days on the bike, and good way to see parts of the country and the world. So yeah.
Yeah, I think gravel bikes are perfect for that too, right? Like you get to travel overnight and get away from the traffic and find those great campsites. You're camping up the top of the hill here tonight, and I think gravel's obviously you know, the opportunities to get onto those paths and into the wilderness is definitely part of the appeal. Yeah,
like we did a bit of that Surf Coast Trail on the way here, and you know, if you didn't have a gravel bike, if you had a road bike, you'd just have to stay on that Great Ocean Road, and with all the trucks and cars zooming past you. So I think the beauty of a gravel bike is it enables you to take little segues or to explore different roads that you wouldn't necessarily explore. So
great. So back to Simpatico now. So where are you set up? Where are you located? How can people find you?
Yeah, so we've got a base in Croydon, which is the eastern suburbs of Melbourne for you guys that aren't in Melbourne. So yeah, we're there. We do a lot of riding out of that base up in the Dandenongs, and also a little bit towards Kinglake as well. So that's where Simpatico is. I live, as you mentioned, down towards the Bass Coast, so I do a fair bit of riding up there. So I think one thing to always think about with gravel, when people think, oh, I've got a gravel bike, I should set it up like this person because that's what they told me. But where are they riding? Is it different to where you're riding? You know, like here, up in the hills here, you want a decent tyre, you want to lower your tyre pressures because some of those corrugations are pretty heavy, and you want, like you said, low gearing. So whereas if you're somewhere that has some more flatter rail trails and some flatter riding, you don't need that. You can get away with 35s and a slick tyre. So I think gravel is very diverse, and it's becoming more diverse. On that, like on the Dirty Warnie, I was going past guys on with 45s. There's guys who were on 35 slicks. There was a few guys on like hardtail mountain bikes as well doing it. So, you know, they're all part of the gravel community. And I think we have to sometimes remember that it's not boxed into a certain drop bar, certain tyre size. It can be very diverse. I mean, you've gone to the Northern Grodies a few times, and you see the different kinds of bikes there. It's, you know,
yeah, there's a bit of everything down at those rides. I remember I came across a guy with a full like bikepacking rig. It was almost like a monster bike. It was pretty
like
impressive.
2.6-inch tyre, or yep.
All right, so Simpatico's launching with this, the N1. Can you tell us a bit about sort of the thoughts behind this particular bike and sort of who it's designed for and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so before I start, the name N1, actually we only found that name at the Handmade Bike Show because Fixio was doing photo shoots of the different bikes. He saw our bike and Simpatico, and we hadn't really come up with a name for it. And he goes, look, you got 10 minutes, give me a name. So he needed a name. So we had this quick brainstorm of a few of the ideas that were floating around. And we're like, well, N1 sounds good. Nice and simple. It means what it says. It's a bike that does a lot of things. One bike to be able to ride a bit of road, ride a bit of gravel, make it your own. So
sort of a bit of a play on the N+1 sort of theme in cycling.
Yeah.
You know, people always think they need another bike, but maybe this one you're sort of claiming it could do everything.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. Like, you know, if you're someone that's comfortable to change tyres or change wheels, I think you can make it a bike that you do a lot. You know, you do your road rides and you do your gravel rides on. For some people, they might just want to box it and go, look, I just want to get it as a gravel bike. I just want it as a road bike. So I think you can make it your own with that sort of, and within your abilities too. Like, you know, for some people, they get a bit scared about changing a tyre or changing a chain or set of brake pads, whereas others, that's something they like to do. So,
was it always part of the plan to start with gravel? Like, was it always a gravel-focused bike company?
I think so. Like, that's what Jeff and I have mainly been riding for the last few years. Jeff comes from more a road background and has launched into gravel that way. I've come from a bikepacking mountain bike background. And we do a bit of road as well. And so we bring these two different perspectives to it. And so then we've both been riding these gravel bikes, and so we bring the learnings from we each learn. And I think too, it's a lot of, I think we were speaking on the ride today, like, you know, how many cars did we see?
I think we saw one, maybe two for the whole ride.
A second one just as we're coming to Moggs Creek.
Just
we'll call it a half a car or something.
Yeah, 1.5 cars in 2.5 hours.
Yeah, like you know, you're on the road, you've got cars just zipping past you. If I'm on the road, I'll have at least 2 close calls sometimes on the road, depending where I'm riding with a car. Whereas you don't get that. I mean, sometimes your own ability or your own boldness of descending causes you to have a few more close calls, but that's part of the fun. So
yeah, I think we were saying they're at more risk from hitting a kangaroo riding around here in the morning than being hit by a car. So that's part and parcel, I guess.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
So we'll get back to talking about titanium as a frame material. You've obviously launched Simpatico with that in mind. So why focus on tie, and why tie specifically for gravel bikes?
I think there's a few things. It looks good. There's the performance and also the durability of the product as well. So it's you know, if you ever owned a carbon bike and ridden it as a gravel bike for 3 or 4 years, it starts to look pretty tired if you're riding a lot of gravel. whereas a titanium bike, it doesn't, and you can actually refresh it, you can repolish it, and so there's, from that point of view, there's the durability. And then the performance, it a bit like steel, it adds a bit more compliance to the ride feel. So you know, whereas a carbon frame can often feel very stiff. You know, we had someone recently who was on a Cervelo Aspero, ridden it for many years. Similar geometry, similar enough that it wasn't too big a jump, and then they jumped on to test one of the Simpaticos M1s and were blown away by the difference in the ride feel. So I think that's, if you haven't ridden titanium, that's a big thing that you notice, even if the geometry is similar. So
yeah, I think that durability is a real appeal. You know, these bikes get knocked around, right?
Oh, yeah. Like the road you were trying to explore the other day, and all the mud and the stuff that was stuck on the bike. Like, if you had a carbon bike, you'd be like, oh, you know, it's gonna chip things off and scratch things up really quickly. So I think that adds to the being able to explore these roads with a bit more confidence that you're not gonna, you know, trash your bike.
Maybe that's a good segue into the paint jobs you're doing on these. Can you tell us a little bit about, obviously a lot of titanium bikes we see are just raw brushed titanium. Your ones have got this lovely coating on them. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's a product, we're using a product called Cerakote, so it's a ceramic coating. It's very durable, very lightweight and very thin. So that means when you're coating a frame, you're not adding heaps of weight, but you're also it's got that durability, so it goes with the titanium. But also I think it adds some nice colour. Like, it's the colours we're trying to focus on are more, I guess, more earthy, more natural tones of colours. So it sort of gives that contrast. So I think we've been pretty happy with it. We've tested lots of different colours, and we've started with a palette like this, and I think we've tried to narrow down because we realised that no company offers 6 or 7 colour combinations as a stock standard. So we're trying to narrow it down, and then we can launch new colours and new seasons and stuff like that. And we can, you know, if someone really twists their arm, we might be able to do a custom colour for them as well. So the frame stuff's coating is done locally. So yeah, that's why we've got a bunch of raw frames in stock if you're not sure which way to go. So it's a good product. And suits the bike, I think, too.
Yeah, it's a stunning finish. You've sort of got to see it in person, I think. It's a real sort of nice matte finish, but as you say, really durable, and you still get those hints of the titanium coming through, and the bottom bracket and
like
the chainstays.
On the logo here, that's the titanium coming through there, so it's just a subtle sort of emphasis that it is titanium, you know. So we try to keep like the bottom bracket area and the rear stays just in the titanium, because they're the ones that cop a lot of the sticks and, you know, the rocks and things like that. So.
Fair enough. And then you got the nice colour accents on the stem and the rear hubs as well.
Yeah, that's another part that we want to, I guess, emphasise, is having those, you know, colour matching parts on there, or contrasting parts, I should say. So yeah,
I think if people are going custom, or maybe not custom, but going titanium, they're definitely going for an aesthetic, and I think this is meeting the brief there as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk geometry. You sort of said it was not too dissimilar to a Cervelo Aspero, and I've had a look at the charts. It's not that different to the Canyon Grail that I was riding before. A bit of a longer stem, bit of a steeper head angle, but it rides very much like a all-road sort of bike. Is that the aim?
It's a bike we're trying to blend those genres, like the N+1. It's sort of, you know, you want to be able to do a road ride on it in a group ride, but you want to be able to put some gravel tyres in it and doing, do a gravel ride. So you want that downhill handling to be well. So it's always a combination of factors with geometry. It's your head tube angle, you mentioned. It's the bottom bracket height. It's your chainstay length at the back. So there's a lot of key factors in it, and also those things vary between sizes. The chainstay length and your axle to crown stays the same, Everything else has to vary between the sizes to keep the same ride feel. So that's something we've worked pretty hard at trying to get right. We'll get some more feedback over the years if we have done it right or not. But I think, trying to, even for those really tall riders or those really small, it's the extremes where you're trying to keep that good ride feel right. So yeah, I think we've ridden it with 28s, 32s on the road, or even 35 slicks on the road, and then we've ridden it with, as you say, like with 44s on today. So I think it ticks all the boxes in riding all those terrains, as long as you got the right wheel set up on there as well. The other factor which we've been talking about a lot lately is gearing. Like, I think you mentioned it today, like if you got a ride where you're doing lots of hills, you need gearing to get up there.
Especially if you're in my sort of physical condition, you need a bit of help.
Yeah, but I think also, if you are going to set it up to do multiple different times of disciplines, you need to think about what gearing you're going to run, because you want to be able to bridge those different things. Also, like when you run bigger tyres, the gearing changes. When you run 28s between 44s, that's a big shift. So if you're running 44s, you don't want as higher gearing, you want lower.
And why is that exactly?
So you got a bigger wheel, so it's gearing up actually. So like I like if you're running a 44, 45, 46 tooth chainring is pretty good for a lot of people, whether it's a 1x wide or a 2x. Whereas if you go 48, 50 with that big gearing, it's a little bit too high, and you lose that bottom end to be able to get up the hills, and you don't really use the top end because you're pushing a bigger wheel. It takes longer to go around. So.
Makes sense. Just physics.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about this all road bike sort of category, or a bike to do it all that people talk about. And when I was first shopping for my first gravel bike, it was a concept that really appealed to me. I was living in Melbourne, a lot of road, I was riding a lot of the bike paths. I knew that I had the opportunity to come down here, ride some awesome gravel, which is real gravel and quite gnarly in sections. Yeah. So I was looking for, my first gravel bike, and I wanted it to cover all those spectrums. And I settled on the Canyon Grail because I felt like it, it might have that sort of road bike feel while still giving me the capability to come out here. After a couple of years of riding it, I guess I was getting a little bit skeptical of the one bike to do it all platform. And granted, I never really changed the wheels. I never changed the tires. This was a bike that I'd left stock. But I sort of felt like on the road, like it just felt a bit long and a bit sluggish. Then out here on the real gravel, I sometimes felt like it maybe didn't have the tire clearance. I was running 40s. I think they maxed out at 42. But I also felt like the geometry was a bit limiting. I haven't got the best bike handling skills. I'm an adult starting cyclist. I felt like it was sort of maybe pushing me over the top a bit too much for the gravel around here. So I was sort of starting to think, is it I'm going to need two bikes for those two sort of scenarios? One for sort of the urban stuff in Melbourne, and one perhaps a bit more gnarly for this out here. But riding this, I'm sort of coming around. I think the tire clearance is making a big difference. This is running a 44 at the moment.
So technically it's 45 you can clear, but I think some brands and some wheel combinations you go up to like a 47, 48. As we know, different tire brands, they're not all the same as how they fit on rims. So
so that's been really interesting for me riding this bike. Like I feel much more confident coming down the gravel here. It's giving you that little bit of extra traction. And riding it around Melbourne, I haven't put the slicks on it yet. I'm keen to give that a go, but it's definitely it's a bit lighter than my grail that I was riding, and it seems to, the stem's a bit longer, the handling's a bit twitchier, the handlebars you've spec'd here are a little bit narrow. I think they're 40s, I was running 44s. So some of those little spec choices, I think they can go a long way, right?
Yeah, and you could change those things to make it your own. Like you could put a little bit of a shorter stem, wider bars. Certainly something you do is if you are going to go shorter stem, sometimes it is best to go wider bars to keep that stability. So I think it's something that people can do is is, you know, we can spec a bike like we think it should be, but how do you want it to be, and where do you ride that makes it your own of how you want to ride it? So I think you know, there's the stock where it starts, but then learning which way you want to pivot as you ride more is important. And you've been riding for a couple of years now, so you know sort of what you want to get out of a bike. And
yeah, you learn a lot, don't you? And I think, as you say, like, you've just got to be willing to change out some parts, and if you're going somewhere new.
So would you change tyres yourself?
I would have. I just never really sort of invested in a different set. I think the max clearance on that frame was a 42 anyway, so I didn't have a huge amount of room to go. I chucked some slicks on it at one point. Same tyres, but just sort of tubes and some slicks. Yeah. I think some 32s, and it didn't deliver the sort of road back like feel that I was hoping that other bike. I'm keen to see how this one goes with the slicks on it as well.
We certainly do that. We can put some 32s on it and different wheels and see how it goes. So
let's talk a little bit more specs and sort of the range of bikes that you're offering at launch. This is your Force spec bike. It's got a classified hub on it. The classified's interesting. What is sort of the reasoning there?
Well, I always like to push the boundaries and push what's normal and what's not normal, so I'm always looking out for new opportunities or something new and different. So that was pretty my doing to try it, but it's just something that offers that 2x range and that tighter gear ratio at the rear cassettes, while still being in a 1x format. So it's a combination of factors. I think in gravel sometimes getting that gearing right is hard, especially if you're riding varied terrain. I come from a 1x gravel background. That's what I've been predominantly riding for years, so I'm used to the slightly jumpier steps, but I also know that where I ride, I'm either going up or down. I don't do a lot of flat, so I don't notice that, you know. Whereas if you're someone else that rides a few road byways and a few flatlands in between, the 2x is great then for that. So I think it's a system. There's things I like about it, and there's quirks that irk me a little bit, that frustrate me a bit about it. So it's not for everyone, but I think it has its place, and hopefully we'll see it develop further, and they can improve on those little things and continue to be a good product, I reckon. So
yeah, it certainly has a lot of promise to sort of meet that brief, right? Like all the benefits of 1x with the tighter gearing jumps that you get with 2x. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes. The wheels are stunning. Can you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, so that's our own house brand, Envisage. These were some of the prototype ones that we've been developing. We've actually haven't standardized on these ones. We've gone with a different rim shape, but deep and wide. Like I think going wide, if you're running a road tire, you get a bit more of you get a bit more of an aero benefit out of it. You get a lot of strength on a wide rim, and so I think these are probably pushing the boundaries of what is normal for gravel. Because
what's the internal width you're running?
They're 29 internal. Yeah,
it's pretty wide.
Yeah. So we've run 35s in them, but that's pretty as low as you want to go. 35 then blows out to like 38, so it's kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit of what's normal. But I think running for these ideally, running like a 44 on this sort of rim is a good way to go. How have you found them?
I love the wheels. They're super light. You notice the difference definitely.
Yeah, they roll pretty well. Do well.
And you've gone with UDH for the rear dropout or the derailleur hanger.
SRAM paid us some money, so we no. It's a bit of it's in some ways when you're in the cycling industry, you got to follow trends a little bit, but you can create your own. But you have to go where the market is going a little bit. So UDH means that people can run the new SRAM transmission. It also means you've got that benefit of having a universal derailleur hanger that's readily available. They're a lot cheaper, like they're only, you know, $28 Australian or something, or $29, you know. They're cheaper and they're easily available. So I think that's big part of our philosophy, and this is the titanium, this is part of the UDH, this is part of the semi-internal cable routing here. It's a bike that's easy to live with. It's not a bike that's gonna cause you mechanic frustrations. It's yeah, that's why we went that way. So
And the T47 bottom bracket as well.
Yeah. Threaded bottom brackets are the way to go. I, having worked in the bike industry, have dealt with many BB90s, BB30s, press fits, and they just don't last. Yeah, and they don't last long working well. I know there's heaps of solutions that you can kind of make them work better and things like that, but you end up just getting headaches after a while. So
let's talk crank length. Interesting spec choice on this bike. It's 165mm cranks, which is a big drop from the 172.5s I've been used to riding.
It's only this much though.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. It's like, maybe it sounds like a lot.
What's 7mm? Like, is it much? Can you see it?
I think you can feel it.
You can feel it.
You can definitely feel it.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind the short cranks?
So they're an Appleman crank. So if you jump on the Appleman website, he's got a bunch of different info about why he chooses the shorter cranks. He actually runs 155s a lot of the time now. Really short, which is pretty pushy. Again, when you're making stuff, you kind of push the boundaries of what's normal and then let everyone catch up later. So I think it reduces knee bend is a big part of it. And so it helps for a lot of us that we're not elite cyclists. We are cyclists that ride 200-300 k's a week maybe, and so we want to be able to keep riding and be comfortable. It does seem to affect the gearing. I don't know if you've found, like, it feels like I'm spinning a little bit more. So sometimes you might have to, if you do go a shorter crank, you might have to gear up a little bit.
I'll have to get a physicist on to explain that one to us, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just a feeling, like, because you're going a smaller circle, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
less leverage and you're gonna have to put more.
Like track bikes, they tend to not run short cranks because they need a big leverage to go to the starting blocks. Because they don't have any gears. We have gears, so we don't. If you're in the right gear, it's not a problem. So. Yeah, it's something we're experimenting with, and this bike for the show was a bit of a show of some of the things, whether it's the rims, you know, the classified hub, the cranks. It's some things that we're experimenting with. I think that's the beauty of the handmade bike show, if anyone's been, is you get to see some of the stuff that companies maybe haven't released yet, or maybe just sort of teasing with.
Dallying in, really.
Yeah. That's pushing the boundaries of what's seen as normal. But yeah, that's part of the fun.
Yeah, so maybe primarily just a fit decision there to
yeah. Like I personally, I feel more comfortable on 175s, but that's partly because I'm quite long in the legs, so that's different for someone else. Like Jeff, for example, he's found these quite comfortable for him at a 165. So yeah, we're all different. So
that's it. So what about the other builds in the range? What sort of specs are you popping on there? I think you've got a GRX 2x on one of them. What else can people sort of get from you?
Yeah, so we've both got Shimano and SRAM. In the Shimano at the moment, because this is an electronic only bike group set. So we've got a bit of a combination of either 105 or Ultegra with a GRX crank, 2x. So you get the either 48 or the 46 31, and then we've also got in the SRAM we've got the 1x transmission. So that's with the big 1052 at the back and the whatever size chainring you want at the front. You know, you can pretty go up to about 46, I reckon, stretching the boundary a bit, but 42, 44 is probably enough because of the 10 tooth at the back. So they're the main ones.
I'm really keen to try out that that SRAM transmission. I think it looks
it's quite different on a gravel bike. Yeah,
it looks really interesting, and I think the main selling point there is like shifting under load, right? Like you can shift confidently under load without that sort of grinding that you get if you haven't quite got your gear selection right before you hit the steep pinches. So I think I've heard one of the criticisms maybe from mountain bikers is that it's a bit slow. Like I think the way it works is it waits for a particular point in your pedal stroke to select when to shift. But we were sort of talking about this morning. You don't see that as a big barrier for gravel?
Well, I think a lot of the time you're anticipating things. If you've done a bit of riding, you're anticipating changes in terrain and you're getting ready. The advantage then of the transmission is if you're stuffed up and you're in the wrong gear, you can shift a little bit slower, but it'll shift when you're putting a lot of torque through those pedals. So I think, there's wins and losses with the system. I think they've marketed it pretty heavily towards the e-bike market, why they've tried to make it work under lots of torque. But it doesn't mean gravel riders on non-e-bikes can use it. So yeah, it's got its wins and its losses, but it's certainly a pretty durable system.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sort of seems like I think you can jump on Instagram and see people jumping on these jumping on these derailleurs and they don't bend, they don't move, they work perfectly fine. So maybe the durability aspect of it is the real advantage for adventure gravel bikes.
And I think for a lot of people, like they'll either be a Shimano or a SRAM person, whereas for myself, I've always jumped between lots of different group sets, and you're always trying different things. So like with the Shimano, the shifting it's the best shifting. Like it just shifts well, whereas the SRAM, it shifts I would say it's very precise with its shifting. You know when you're in a gear, which I actually think from a off grid or off road perspective is a better thing, because you want to net those clean shifts. You don't want to feel like the chain's about to drop. You want it to be just, I know when I'm in that gear.
It's very deliberate, isn't it?
It's
that's heavy click and a heavy gear change.
Yeah. So that's the big difference. If you haven't ridden SRAM, if you come from a Shimano background, it's a big difference you'll find if you move to that. So
I want to ask you a little bit about what it's like to start a new bike company. Like you've come at this, a couple of guys probably having the discussions that most riders will have when they head out with their mates, right? Like you talk about your bikes, you go, what would I change, what would I fiddle with? You've taken that next step and started the company. Has it been a challenging ride? Like, what are the things you've had to overcome that perhaps you didn't anticipate?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest learnings for me is learning to deal with different suppliers and learning to bring all the pieces together. We have overseas suppliers, but they're all assembled in Croydon. So we sort of, trying to find the right connections, the suppliers that give the good QC, the good product, can sort of help you, easy to communicate. Like communication's a big thing. So that's been a process, and we're still learning that. And also, like, we're only two, so we're not a lot of people. So you kind of wear different hats. Like, you're dealing with your suppliers, then you're dealing with your dealers, you're dealing with podcast people, you're dealing with other marketing things. Like, there's lots of different things that you're trying to do. So I think trying to juggle all that's been a bit of a challenge, but I think Jeff and I bring different perspectives to it, and sometimes we'll test each other and we'll try new ideas, and the other person go, I don't think it's quite there yet, or likewise. So you have this good sort of, I guess, brainstorming sessions. We've had several over the sort of year and a half. Throwing long phone calls, throwing different ideas out there, throwing them out for a bit, letting them sit, and then either keeping them or throwing them out with the bathwater. So
I think it's kind of the great thing about these small companies, right? Like small companies doing boutique sort of bikes, you get that opportunity. You're never gonna see bigger companies take the risks on some of these things, but you've got an opportunity to be a bit more flexible, perhaps.
And it's a balance of, I think I was talking before, of bringing something to market that's new and innovative, but isn't too far out that people go, nah, it's too scary. So I think you kind of, you got to hold back on a few ideas. Well, I do hold back on a few ideas, keep them for later, and bring some good things, but also some normal things. Because
I was gonna ask you about that, because you know, it's a boutique sort of industry, the boutique market you're targeting, and you know, there's some established players in the titanium bike space, even in Melbourne. You know, you've got Curve and Circa pumping out bikes. So, what is sort of Simpatico's vision for being a point of difference there?
Yeah, I think a big part of what we're wanting to offer bikes that are easy to live with, that have some colorways to them that are different to just a raw titanium bike, and we're also wanting to, I guess, offer them at a price point that's a bit more achievable for people. You know, there's still a high price bike, but I think if we do our due diligence and making sure that we're getting a good quality product, but doing it in a way that's not going to, you don't have to spend 15, 20 grand on it. You know, you can spend 8, 10 grand on it. So it's still a lot of money, and especially at the moment, it's a lot of coin for people. But the other way, I mean, we haven't done any of these yet, but you know, if you've got a tired carbon bike and you want to give it a refresh, and you've got a good group set, a good set of wheels, we've got some frames. So I mean, that's another way of, in the current climate of where we're at the moment in the world, I think it's a good way of giving your bike a refresh and new bike day.
Yeah, excellent, and a lower entry point to titanium.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I think, you know, we offer some similar things, but some different things as well. We've tried to make this M1. It's a bike that gets enough clearance, has enough compliance, but it feels sporty enough. Like, it's got 425 rear chainstays, so not super long, but still can clear up to 45, 47-ish sort of tyres. So I think trying to keep that balance of fun and agility, but also comfortable enough on a descent.
I think that's what people are looking for. A lot of people are looking for out of their gravel bike, right? Like, that's what they want. They still want it to be a fun, sporty ride.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll go on rides and you'll just want to hit some different trails, and you try different trails, and maybe they're not quite as smooth as what you anticipated. So you need something that's going to have that versatility, but also, you know, like we said before, if you want to set it up as a road bike, you need to be able to feel like it accelerates well, that it feels stable enough at high speeds. So I think those things are always a balancing act. So and I don't say we get it perfect. Like, I think there's no, even though we have marketed it as an N1, I think there's no bike that can do everything. But knowing where you live, where you like to ride on holidays, you know, is a good place to start. So.
And you've had some interest from bike shops in getting the frame in?
Yeah, we've got a few dealers that we're working on relationships with. So trying to network. So if there's any bike shops listening, give us a hoy. But a lot of custom builders as well. That sort of genre of bike shops as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. What's next? This is the first bike in the range, obviously. Have you got plans to expand and deliver a few different options for people?
Yeah, we never stop. I think I was riding with you today. That's a bike that we're prototyping at the moment. So, and then there's another at least 2 in the works as well. So, but it's a process. Like, I've got this bike, I've only built it up a week ago. I'll give it a good 6 months testing before we even think about moving forward with it. So I think that's part of what we want to do, is actually really test products in the real world, test different things on them as well. So there's more stuff around the corner. We might tease some stuff early next year. We'll see how we go. So
excellent. So we talked a bit earlier about the Northern Grodies ride and the sort of diversity of gravel bikes you see there, and you see it all across the country, right? Like these little communities. There's one down here on the Surf Coast, the Otway Panther Gravel Collective. You know, regularly organising rides and building community around gravel. Where do you sort of see Simpatico fitting into that, and are you able to contribute to that community the way with what you're building?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's what we're aiming. We're aiming to be a gravel or road brand. I think you know, like on those rides, you see people on different rigs, on hardtails, on 2.6-inch tyres, on 35s, 38s, whatever they want to ride. I think the beauty of gravel cycling is it brings people from different worlds. You've got your keen road cyclists that are delving into gravel. You've got your people that haven't been a cyclist that are jumping in, and you've also got your mountain bikers that are coming in there as well. So I think it brings all those groups together, and it enables lots of people to ride different things, and that's okay. And so I think, for looking ahead with the bikes that we offer, they're going to be diverged on that. So there'll be bikes that might clear bigger tyres. There'll be bikes that might have more integration or aero elements, or be a bit more sporty in their geometry. So I think it's diverse, and also the age. I don't know if you have seen some of those rides. You'll have people in their early 20s riding those rides. You'll have people in their 60s, 70s. Those old guys seem to be able to ride a lot. I don't know. They just have all this time.
Retirement, I think, is probably the answer.
There's some fit old guys out there, but I think that's a real good thing. I think diversity of ages, diversity of backgrounds, and people that come to it is what gravel cycling is about.
I think it's great. I think I've said this before on the podcast, but when I first started riding, road cycling definitely has that sort of unapproachable nature sometimes, whereas it's a bit cliquey, where are you going to fit in? But gravel, it's easy to find a community of like-minded people, diverse community, but people who are all into the same things that you're into. Getting out there, exploring, and just having a good time with people who have similar interests. So.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's certainly something we need, and I think it's something that we should keep going.
Excellent. Brandon, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. Thanks very much for getting me out of a pickle after I crashed my Canyon Grail into the carport and shed a single tear about that one. But you guys jumped to the rescue pretty quick and hooked me up with an interim solution to get me through this summer at least. And really grateful. Where can people follow you along? Are you on Instagram?
Yeah, on Instagram. Our website's there. Give us a call. Drop in. Say hi. We're around.
Excellent. Thanks very much for coming on the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast, and thanks for making the effort to come down here to Moggs Creek.
It's been awesome. I don't get to come down this part of the world very often, and it's coast, but it's different, and the bush out there is amazing. So if anyone wants to go for a gravel ride, come down, check it out.
Yeah, you can stay in Anglesea or Aries Inlet, or
I thought you got to offer your house.
Oh yeah, jump on Airbnb. I'm sure you can find a solution. But really, really chuffed that you made the effort to come down. It was great to go for a ride with you this morning and share a bit of this beautiful place with you.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Great, thanks, Brandon.
Cheers.